Good afternoon. This is Joe Scorese, your mortgage lending specialist here at WeWork in Northern Liberties, and we are hosting Work Your Money podcast. The chief bottle washer hostess is Michelle Wong, and she is going national and eventually international with this podcast, and I've been honored enough for her to ask me to bring in some wonderful professional services and business associates that I'm comfortable with and work with and introduced to a lot of my network here in the Philadelphia market. And we're having a great time here on a Saturday afternoon. The Eagles are going to be playing quite soon. And I dragged one of my colleagues and one of my referral sources that I refer, zoning business, expediting business, just anything on the legal side when it comes to getting something repurposed here in the Philadelphia market. Jordan Rushie from Rushie Law, and I've known him probably about 7-8 years now. We started off in a debate, and then we became friends, and we drank together and ate meat together, and we're still hanging out. So it's all good stuff. And,
a lot of meat together.
And now we were neighbors at my first office is up in 2424 Studios, and now we're neighbors again here at WeWork, which was good to see him here. And he's teaming up with some really good expediters as well that I've made some business introductions to some developers, specifically from the Meet the Developers event that we hosted here a couple months ago, which was fantastic.
Great event.
Yeah, if you've ever been to WeWork in Northern Liberties, the room was full. And this morning, we just had a landlord-tenant law workshop with Kenny Baritz, who represents landlords through HAPCO. So we've been busy all day here since 9 o'clock in the morning. We're pushing out some great interviews and bringing some really good professional services and questions to the Philadelphia market. And Jordan, I'd like you just to kind of start off, talk about some of your background and where you're at now, kind of like a little mini resume, and then we'll kind of tie into some questions.
Sure. So I graduated law school in 2008 from Temple University, Temple Law. Worked for a small firm, worked for a bigger firm, and then in 2012 I started my own law firm. And the focus has always been on real estate development and zoning, and what we try to do is just help people that want to build things, people that want to do construction, anybody that has a real estate issue is what my law firm is focused on. Like Joe had said, we were based out of 2424 Studios in Fishtown, and then in 2016 we decided to make a move over here at WeWork in Northern Liberties. It's been really great. I've been very happy with the networking opportunities, the people that I've met. And then my staff consists of myself, a paralegal, and what are called expediters. And expediters are something that a lot of people don't know about, but it allows individuals to go down to L&I, licenses and inspections, and kind of facilitate the process, to file your use applications, to get your building permits, to get your sewer permits and stuff like that. And the benefit is, as a developer or a real estate professional, or as even a mortgage guy, you don't want to be sitting down in L&I for 4 hours only to be told that you needed a B ticket instead of a D ticket, or your check needs to be in blue ink instead of black ink this day. And the rules at L&I can be very frustrating and inconsistent. So what we've based our firm on is I handle the zoning, the community presentations, overseeing that kind of stuff, giving advice on what I think about the market, what I think appropriate would zoning be, what would pass. And then at the same time, we try to add value to you by sending our team of expediters down to L&I to make sure that you're not spending hours and hours upon hours sitting down there hoping that you're in the right line. So
that leads into a kind of a multi-question, but like you could almost answer within the questions. Mm-hmm. It's like twofold. We are a city and a county that is a mixture of neighborhoods. And with those neighborhoods, which I think we're now at 55 plus designated CDCs and or RCOs, which mm-hmm. are very strong in some circumstances when it comes to decision making in construction, development, repurposing, redeveloping, developing, and they have a say. I know you are a transplant from another area of Pennsylvania down to here in Temple. Is that one of the appealing items that really caught your eye, that you could literally build a relationship by neighborhood? And then let's talk about some of the things that happen when it doesn't work so well for a developer at a specific neighborhood. And we don't need to name neighborhoods, but like, what's your take on that? Because that anywhere else other than Philadelphia, can't in Pennsylvania, other than Pittsburgh and maybe some of the other small cities, there are no CDCs or RCO. You go to the township, you go to the community, and you get things addressed. What do you find differently here for the good and some not so good?
Well, here's what I found for the good. I have a funny saying that in Philadelphia, you can get up close to the crazy. And I remember years ago going to see Milton Street was singing over a casket. Dan McQuaid was there from his blog. And Philadelphia, on the one hand, it's incredibly accessible. I mean, you can find Mayor Kenny drinking at the Ray Street Cafe, having Chardonnay. You can run into Michael Nutter on the street. I've run into Councilman Squilla watching Eagles games, and I think it's really cool that you can get so up close to your elected potential officials and kind of the movers and shakers in the city. This is a little bit more complex, but one of the biggest challenges of Philadelphia is every single RCO operates differently, and an RCO is a registered community organization, which is a civic association, which is essentially gives input to the zoning board of adjustment and says, hey, the neighborhood's in favor of this or the neighborhood's not in favor of this. The challenge is there's no uniform guidelines for how an RCO should operate. So, for example, Northern Liberty's Neighbors Association, who I think is a wonderful organization, operates completely different than, let's say, the Bella Vista Civic Association, who may operate different than the Mayfair Civic Association. Some of the RCOs have very complex bylaws, checks and balances, qualified board of directors. And I've had some RCOs, I'm not going to name names, who've said, write us a check for $500 and we'll support whatever the heck you guys want to put in. Mm-hmm. So what I'm hoping happens is at some point, City Planning Commission at least proposes some kind of uniform audit and says, this is the way RCO should work. These are some of the standard operating procedures. I don't think they need to regulate them down to the T, but again, when you have one civic associate operating one way and another that's operating completely different, it really creates a challenge for developers who say, well, what's the neighborhood going to think of this? And just because it was not approved in Northern Liberties doesn't mean it wouldn't be approved somewhere else. So I think that's the biggest hurdle.
Lack of consistency.
Lack of consistency, precisely.
Okay. And this leads into, we're in 2018, we had an unbelievable 17. Okay. Houses are flying off the market 2-3 days, low inventory count, not enough real places to live, not enough places to rent, for that matter. Where do you see 18 the heaviest? I'm going to give you 3 categories to make it easy. Repurposing, like taking something and bumping out the back, full gut rehab, type of property, or new construction. Who's the greyhound that's going to get to the end and catch the rabbit of the race? Well,
I think it's 2 and 3. I think it's going to be, with respect to the rehabs, I mean, there's a lot of inventory in places like Fishtown. There's not a lot of inventory in a place like Fishtown or Richmond or the kind of place in the Kensington area.
Yep.
So in that
place, Fishington.
In Port Fishington, for lack of a better word. So in that place, I think it was Ray that was just saying, people that are buying houses, they want a finished kitchen, they want a finished bathroom, they don't want to have to do any construction work, they don't want to...
I want turnkey.
Right, they want a total turnkey. Unfortunately, you can only get a total turnkey if either you have a vacant lot where you can put up new construction, or you have something like where I live in Old Richmond. You have a lot of these old houses that really just need to be gutted and put up. At the same time, if you have an area with a lot of vacant lots, for example, Strawberry Mansion, I mean, that would be appropriate for new construction, which personally, I'm not a huge fan of new construction.
Brewery Town, too, is where that whole corridor up there.
Right, with all the...
top end of Girard.
Right, so I've never been the problem that I have with new construction is a lot of times the developers cut too many corners. You have a house, my house is 200 years old, never floods, basement's always clear. All I had to do was make cosmetic improvements and put in appliances, whereas a lot of times what I've seen with the new construction, for example, I saw somebody nail in a fiberglass roof. You can't nail in a fiberglass roof. That completely defeats the purpose of having it. So to answer your question in a roundabout way, I think the most value added is going to be in the rehabs, in the guts. But I think people
that may be taking a Trinity and turning it into bumping out the back 6 feet, tonight, you know where I'm going
Right.
with this, and maybe repurposing the property to be something a little different than it was.
Yeah, just making it a little bit more better, a little bit more functional.
And run with what's acceptable from history.
Right. And the other thing that I like is when a lot of these developers are buying these industrial properties are pretty interesting because they really present a challenge for the neighborhood because they're dilapidated. They've been there for
They're an eyesore. They're white
20,
elephant.
30, 40 years and they haven't been doing anything. And a developer says, look, I'm going to take this thing out. I want to demo it. The demo is not going to be too big a deal. And I would have put in some condos. And personally, I think that's generally a good use of those sorts of properties rather than just leaving them dilapidated where they become a danger to the neighborhood.
And I just saw a really nice building repurposed down on Jasper Street,
Okay.
deep into Kensington, and extremely impressive with the finishes. I mean, listen, your construction cost is up, so your construction cost is going to be the same here as here. You're a licensed general contractor as well, so you would agree with that. So it's a matter of making sure it's qualitative work because you don't want to have to go back,
Right.
and go through all types of craziness. So leading to this, you know the city, you know the neighborhoods. Give me 3 neighborhoods that you think are going to be on the rise that nobody's talking about just yet over the next, say, 24 months. We're in a weird market. Rates are bumping up a little bit. China's not buying as much of our treasury bonds. You're going to see the rate move up. You're going to see prime move up to about 3.5. Where do you see a market that's going to facilitate that consistency? Because we're everything we talked about, it ties into a 10-year tax abatement too. So I'm throwing that into your head too as well. That when you repurpose, you're either fixing or flip. There's a 10-year tax abatement here in the Philadelphia market. It's not going away. So give me a couple of neighborhoods that you think.
In my opinion, the most undervalued neighborhood in the entire city is what we call Orca. It's governed by the Old Richmond Civic Association, and that's the area that's north of Fishtown, north of York. You have Frankfurt to the east, and you have Aramingo to the west. And Orca is essentially Fishtown with less bars, but you can still get, I mean, if you can find it, you can still get good product there. The Civic Association has just done a wonderful job of really making quality of life improvements. For example, Old Richmond Civic Association managed to get everybody in the neighborhoods free security cameras, paid for by the Sugar House Casino, and then they sync those cameras up with the 26th Police District, and they've managed to cut crime by 30% in Old Richmond Civic Association. One of their board members, Dan Martino, is running for state representative. I think it's an undervalued neighborhood. It's essentially like living in Fishtown, but with none of the parking woes.
Okay.
I would say number 2, I would have to say Bridesburg. I love Bridesburg. You can get a lot of big places up there. It's a really tight-knit neighborhood. Everybody knows each other. Bridesburg's always been an area that I've been hot on. And another neighborhood that I'm bullish on, but this might even sound pedestrian, is Port Richmond. You just had a new restaurant go in there, Bait and Switch, which is owned by the guy that owns Loco Pez. You have the Hinge Cafe. You have Tacky and Ellie's Pizza. And Port Richmond is essentially, it's coming up organically. It's another tight neighborhood. There's a lot of neat properties you can get out there, and there's a lot of duplexes you can get out of there too that really work well for rentals. So.
And where are you seeing a lot of your business coming from right now? Is it still within Philadelphia? Or are you seeing out-of-state people reaching out to you? Or what are you seeing right now in the previous 3 months and going into 2018?
I'd say it's all Philadelphia.
Okay.
What we have been getting more of, which I always find interesting, is New York developers are starting to notice that. Well, I mean, because for a New York developer, it's like, wow, you can still buy product for under $200,000 and be within biking or even walking distance of the center city. Mm-hmm. So I think New York investors are starting to look more at Philadelphia. I mean, and it really is such a great city because there's very few metropolitan areas like this where you can, I can, even where I'm considered in the outskirts in Fishtown, I can ride my bike to Center City and be there in 15 minutes. There's not a lot of, in New York, you have to live 45 minutes away from Manhattan to get anywhere, and you're still paying $500,000 for it. So.
And what's the best advice you would give? I think this is going to be the most important part, especially when I share this out through a lot of my networks, which are it's a lot newer side of the real estate world. That new investor comes out, he or she has money, they've identified a good product. What's the best advice when you know there's going to be a zoning issue, there's going to be a formation of an LLC, potentially partnership? Like what are the kind of the first couple steps when that you're going to advise them on to do, and maybe even push back to hold them accountable for some things in Philadelphia County?
That's easy. So if you're buying in a more up and coming neighborhood, zone it multifamily. Zone it multifamily. Because if you buy a place in a property that we call dense, Northern Liberties, Fishtown, Center City, you're going to get a lot of neighborhood opposition, and the complaints are going to be not enough parking. Did I mention parking was going to be a complaint?
Parking. It's not location. It's parking.
Right. It's parking.
And more parking issues.
But if you go into an area that's more up and coming, where there's a lot of vacant lots, you can buy a nice property, even if it's zoned what's called RSA 5, residential single attached, which would be a single family home. You have a very good chance of the neighborhood allowing you to build a duplex, a triplex, 3 condos, and I'll just use Fishtown as an example where I live. Years ago, you could buy a property and you could buy a single family home and you could zone it into 3 condos, no problem. That's a great ROI for you guys, because let's even say, $400,000 per condo at 3, that's a lot more money than one single house. However, as the neighborhood gets more dense, more people move in, there's more parking, there's less parking, there's more businesses. The neighborhoods really make it a challenge to get multifamily zoning. So what you want to do, in my opinion, the best advice you can do is if you're going to buy in a challenging neighborhood, get it zoned multifamily while you still can, because in 5 years from now, you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to get too much opposition.
So go for it all.
Right, go for it all right now. While a lot of the more sparse neighborhoods are saying, bring on the people, bring on the development, bring everything on. We'll let you build a multifamily. All we want are people and businesses. Whereas if you're building in a more challenging neighborhood, they're really going to hold your feet to the fire on the zoning code. And I use Northern Liberties as an example. I love being here. I think it's a great neighborhood. I think they have an excellent RCO. However, as a developer, if you want to buy a single family home and zone that into 3 condos, not happening. It's just not going to happen. You're just going to get too much opposition from too many people. So that would be my advice on that.
And rumor has it we're going to have you and some of your other business associates speaking at various events up in the first quarter, going into the second quarter. What's your thoughts of the subjects that you're providing and some of the alliances that you're bringing out to speak on some of those events?
Well, here's the things that I'm usually trying to do is, one, I was actually thinking about this last night. How can we protect realtors and real estate professionals and their clients from making mistakes that cause everybody headaches? And one of the presentations I'm really looking forward to is how to avoid getting sued as a realtor. And one of the big mistakes that I see realtors make is, for example, a property could be zoned or it could be used multifamily for 50, 60, 70, 100 years. But it's not zoned to be used as multifamily. So then they sell the property, and then L&I turns around and cites the new owner, and they say, "What? I thought I bought this as a 2-person home. What the heck happened?" Yep. And it turns out the realtor just made the mistake of not checking that the zoning was appropriate. All they have to do is run on there, look at it, say, "Oh, this is zoned to RSA 5," and just write a quick disclosure statement saying, even though this is being used as a duplex, it may or may not be illegal. You should do your due diligence and consult with a real estate professional and or attorney.
I completely agree, because I know of a property. It was sold as a 6-unit. To be found out afterwards, it was only zoned for a 4. Everyone on the seller's side was aware of it and did not provide the proper information, and now everybody will be getting sued.
Right.
Okay? Because it's going to be, it'll eventually become the 6-unit, but this has been going on for almost 3 years. It's in South Philadelphia. It's really a shame. Really good buyers. They're taking care of the property, and they were taken advantage of because they were new to the market, and it puts a bad taste in their network's mouth to come down here and say, "This is what I'm up against when I'm buying something," because you have professionals in the field that are not proficient with what they're doing, and they're selling bad properties.
And the due diligence is so easy. You just plug in a search on the Philadelphia government map. Mm-hmm. It tells you what the property is zoned, and if it's not zoned for the use, you have your attorney, which shouldn't take them more than an hour, to write up a one-page disclosure statement saying this may or may not be legal. Do your due diligence, sign here, and then it's on the buyer.
And that's why I've extended invites out to you for various subjects this spring, which I'm excited about. I know later in May we're having a Act 135 presentation, which I'm always excited about that because it attracts a lot of people. And I know you're very well versed in who to bring or who to invite, maybe to collaborate with you on that, as a compliment. But I'd like to thank you for taking the time because I know Eagle fans are very dedicated people. I'm a Philadelphian now, about 8-9 years deep. But business is a priority for me, and I really appreciate it. I text you this afternoon, so I need the solid zoning attorney that I know to get out here, and you stepped up the bat, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
How do people reach you and set up a consultation on their circumstances?
So my email is jrushie@rushielaw.com. That's JRUSHIE @rushielaw.com. Or give me a call, old school style, 215-268-3978, 215-268-3978.
Jordan, look, thank you very much.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
This is Joe Scorese, your mortgage lending specialist at Work Your Money podcast. I look forward to seeing you again. Have a great afternoon.